All right. Hello, everybody. I'm currently recording this on the evening of April 26th. I have a little bit to go over today. Um, Probably not gonna be able to get this up by the 27th. I don't know if I mentioned that or not in like the modern countries one. But if I don't get it in on that day, don't worry. This is the last unit I'm posting. Just have the work in by the end of the school year, whenever that is. So for right now, let's just focus on the Crusades. And the are just a period of holy wars waged by Christians, typically against Muslims in the Middle East. There are instances of crusades happening in southern France against breakaway Christian denominations. And there's even a crusade in the Baltic Sea region against the Lithuanians because they remained pagan even after the majority of the region converted to Christianity. But the Crusades are caused by several reasons, some of them religious, some of them political. And the political reason for the Crusade starts in the 10th and 11th centuries AD when the Seljuk people travel from Central Asia. And since they're from Central Asia, guess what? They ride bows and shoot horses. They're nomadic horse warriors. They settle into Anatolia and they start conquering it away from the Byzantine Empire. And they take a lot of Anatolia away from the Byzantine Emperor. And although the Byzantines and the rest of Europe differ in religion, the Byzantines are of course Eastern Orthodox and Western Europe is of course Catholic. There is hope for reconciliation, and there are terms of ecumenicalism, which is just being nice amongst the different denominations of Christianity. And the Byzantine emperor sends a message to the Pope saying, hey, you should totally help us, claim back some of our land, and maybe, just maybe, I'll be Catholic again. And the Pope's like, oh, you're asking us to declare a holy war on the Muslims? And the Byzantine emperor's just like, no, we're asking you to help us regain our territory back. We might join the church. You got it, bub. We'll call for a holy war. So the Pope calls for a holy war, and this can't happen without the consolidation of power amongst the papacy by Pope. I want to say it's Pope Gregory. Pope Gregory puts the Holy Roman Emperor in his place and neuters the actual seat of the emperor into just a show, like a show, kind of like what the Japanese do with the Shogun and the Emperor. Pretty much the Holy Roman Emperor had the idea that he could actually appoint high ranking Catholic officials within his empire. The Pope says screw off, and the Pope consolidates all religious power in Europe. And Pope Urban II in 1098 gives a speech saying, like, yo, if you go over to the Middle East and we conquer Jerusalem, I will forgive you for all your sins. Let's do this, fam. And so not only does the nobility of Europe actually get behind this message, a lot of the peasants do as well. And there's actually a peasant crusade that goes on before the first crusade. So a group of peasants are just walking towards Jerusalem. They meet in battle with the Seljuk Turks, and the Turks completely obliterate them because the Turks are a standing army with infrastructure and command and training and weapons, and the hermits are just like 5'2" European dudes that just carry pitchforks with them. And so later on, when the actual first crusade of the actual landed gentry and the knights and the professional soldiers actually make their way to the Holy Lands, which is the Middle East, the Seljuk Turks don't take them serious at first. And because of that, they catch them with their pants down and they're able to conquer the parts of the Holy Land. They set up their own kingdom, the Crusader kingdoms, capital's Jerusalem. Problems arise, though, because the Crusades aren't one unified movement. They're just several nobles doing their own thing, and there are political rivalries between the Christians. But what happens is the Crusader states are formed, and they last until the late 12th century with the fall of Jerusalem by Fatimid Sultan Salah ad-Din. Yeah, so the Crusades are just doing their own thing, and over time the Muslims fight back. They take cities, they lose them. They take cities, they lose them. And the Crusades are just a good way for European nobility to send their children to, get some military training, and most importantly, get some clout. Um, all is not well, though, because by the late 1100s, the Seljuk Turks and the Fatimid Caliphate, which is the caliphate located in Egypt, are able to consolidate their forces and drive the Christians out. The Christians are driven out of the Holy Land after the Third Crusade. Well, the Christians aren't too happy with that. And so what they do is they plan for a new crusade, the Fourth Crusade, because three's after four. See, you're learning math too. My class is now co-curricular. Deal with that, new tech. And during the First Crusade, the majority of the Crusaders actually traveled by land. So they either had to ride a horse to the Holy Land or they had to walk. And problems arise when you walk a long distance because you need to have more supplies. You're more vulnerable to attack, disease, etc., etc. Also, there was a bad tendency of the Crusaders to ethnically cleanse the Jews from the towns they would stop in Eastern Europe. It's just something that happened. The Christians didn't like the Jews. Well, in the Fourth Crusade, there's a couple of Italian city-states. Italy forms differently than the rest of Europe. While the majority of Western Europe formed feudal kingdoms due to their large tracts of land and their conquering by the Frankish Empire, Italy forms merchant republics. They elect their own leaders. They're called doges, Doge. It's the same thing as that meme with the dog. And they focused on trade. Italy doesn't have that much land to actually cultivate into mass farms. They focus on trade. They're also, right by the ocean, which makes them, really good for trade. And much like the Roman Republic and Empire being located in the middle of the Mediterranean basin, it has the same effect for the Italian merchant states. So what happens is the Italian city-states offer to ferry the Crusaders to the Holy Land. And one of the Italian city-states tells the Crusaders, look, we're not going to take you there for free, but there's this city named Zara, and they haven't paid us our money. So what we want you to do is we want you to go to Zara, we want you to conquer it, and we want you to sack it. So the Crusaders sack Zara. Let me Google something real quick so I don't look like an idiot. It's the Republic of Venice. The Republic of Venice was owed money by the city of Zara. The Crusaders sacked Zara, and in response, the Pope excommunicates not only the Crusaders, but the city-state of Venice. So now we have Crusaders who have no affiliation with the Catholic Church because the Pope just condemned them to hell, for attacking Christians. And so they're on their way, and they stop by Constantinople to get supplies. And while they're in Constantinople, there's a little family feud in Constantinople where one dude wants to be emperor, but his cousin's the emperor. So the dude that wants to be emperor says, look, guys, if you totally overthrow the city for me, I will pay you very fabulously. And so they overthrow the city. And then the new emperor, who promised them all the money, didn't pay them. He just didn't pay them. So in response, the Crusaders completely obliterate the city. They spend 3 days sacking and murdering and raping their way through the city. And by the end of it, they pretty much crippled the Byzantine Empire and formed the Latin kingdoms, taking the majority of the Byzantine lands near the Sea of Marmara and in Eastern Europe. And the Byzantines have to spend the next 70 years trying to recapture their territory, which sucks for them because they were already severely weakened by the Seljuk Turks, and now they have to deal with the Crusaders. So by the time the Ottomans actually consolidate to become the Ottoman Empire, they're severely weakened, and then Constantinople falls, and that's all the Fourth Crusade's fault. It's not all their fault, it's the majority of their fault. Oh, by the way, in 1087, Saladin recaptures Jerusalem and, kicks all the Crusaders out. And fun fact, Jerusalem was actually going through a religious golden age, and then the Crusades happened, and then everyone hated each other. So, lots of effects of the Crusades. Uh, One of the most important things is it stimulates trade between Asia and Europe. So the Middle East is called the Middle East because it's in the middle of the East. The East being Asia, the land full of, delicious trade goods like pepper and cinnamon and compasses. And because of this, and because the Italians are serving as like the navies for the Crusaders, the Italians pretty much get a monopoly on the trading with these trade goods. And eventually Europeans want to get into this, but they don't want to compete with the Italians, so they decide to sail around Africa. Or better yet, what if they just sailed straight to China and India? And that's what they do. The age of exploration is helped spurned by the want of Asian trade goods. And besides, I always use the analogy of like when you go on vacation and there's something on like the place that your family vacations at that you really like. So, for example, my oldest brother really enjoys the drink Sundrop. If you don't know what Sundrop is, it's like Mountain Dew that you left out in the sun. And whenever we would go to the beach in North Carolina, my family would always buy like 10 cases of Sundrop because we couldn't get it. Now, the want for it wouldn't be that great if you were able to get these products, right at your doorstep. The Europeans don't have the climate or the infrastructure to actually have a constant supply of these trade goods. That's why they want to go out and find new trade routes to acquire them. Also, it weakened the Pope and the nobles. The Pope told you to gird your sword, go to a faraway land, murder a bunch of people, and then, you get to go to heaven. And when people tell you to go do something and it horribly backfires, you typically don't have that much faith in that person. There's also other things weakening the Pope at this time. You have the weakening of feudalism just caused by the Black Death, which we'll get to in the next unit. And a lot of nobles are dying on these crusades because these nobles are hell bent on getting glory, and they usually die in cavalry charges. Also, religious relations turn really, 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 really bad because the Christians tend to murder Jews and Muslims wherever they go just to steal their things. And those are the Crusades. Capture the Holy Land, lose the Holy Land, but you get a new want for trade goods. Yeah, and so what's next? Oh yeah, the Mongols. Well, I could talk about the Mongols for 3 hours, but I need to do it in only 8 minutes, and I don't have that much time left. So I'm going to end this off here. Y'all take her easy.